Krishna. I think that I don't know how well the audio is gonna be, but I'll just speak loudly. First, Amranda Prabhu says that when mic equipment doesn't work, we should understand that all of the equipment is in ecstasy after hearing Krishna Katha. So because Prem Sindhu Prabhu is speaking, everyone is so ecstatic, all the mic equipment is so ecstatic that it's falling in its duty to speak.
How we can justify everything.
Yeah. So that's why, that's not a mic karma, it's mic sukriti actually. We've been committing Vaishnava aparadha against our mic system for so long, although it's just doing what we're telling it to do. We're on 118, 4 to 6 today. Oh, it's not? Alright. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nam Sankirtan ki. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to this week's Saturday Srimad Bhagavatam class. We'll be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 18, named Maharaj Parikshit Cursed by a Brahmana Boy, verses 4 through 6. We'll recite introduction prayers, Mangalacharan, everything right now, because we're doing multiple verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Nashta Prayesu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavatir Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We'll recite full Mangalacharan now. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagara Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Alright, so it's good enough that it's posted in the Columbus WhatsApp group chat, the stream, so that works. Alright, I will start with text 4. Nottama shloka vartanam Jushatam tat katamritam Shat sambrano takalepi Smaratam tat padambujam. Mataji, if you want to just recite, because it's not showing up there, so you can Tam shloka vartana Justantam tat katamritam Sat sambramonta kalepi Smaratam tat padambujam. Anyone who has the translation, they can read the translation.
This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions even at the last moment of their lives.
I can read the purport. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The highest perfection of life is attained by remembering the transcendental nature of the Lord at the last moment of one's life. This perfection of life is made possible by one who has learned the actual transcendental nature of the Lord from the Vedic hymns sung by a liberated soul like Shukadeva Goswami or someone in that line of disciplining succession. There is no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from some mental speculator. When the same is heard from an actual self-realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. Thus, a submissive disciple is able to live transcendentally and continue to the end of life. By scientific adaptation, one is able to remember the Lord even at the end of life, when the power of remembrance is slackened due to the derangement of bodily membranes. For a common man, it is very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death. But by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters, one can get this opportunity without difficulty. And it was done in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. So let's first go over the context of the next few verses. We have seen in the last chapter about how Maharaj Parikshit exercised his rule over Kali, the personified Kali, and how he, in his way, was able to subdue that influence. So this proved that he was a dharmic king and he was a devotee king. And Sukadeva Goswami opens the first 3 verses, which were discussed by Her Grace Rajabhakti Mataji last week, about the end result of Parikshit Maharaj's life, as in he got bit by a snake bird, Dakshaka, and eventually he left his body. So now the question is, what happened in order for that to happen, that to occur? The speakers that are in the coming sequence will describe that, but today we're describing why, even though Parikshit Maharaj was cursed by a Brahmana boy, and even though he died a very shocking death, if you see the photos in the 12th canto, it's actually a little bit scary. It's this little multi-headed serpent that just shoots out, bites him, and then everyone's burning, and then he burns all up, and everyone else is surrounded by him, so scared. It's a really shocking, scary death, but even in that situation, Parikshit Maharaj is not disturbed and he's remembering Krishna. So now we have to understand what was the training that Parikshit Maharaj had in order to get to that stage of leaving the body in the correct way. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, or second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj asked 2 questions to Shukadeva Goswami. How should we live and how should we leave? So what are the things we should do while we're alive? But also mainly the question most people are familiar with, what is the duty of a man that is about to die? So this verse talks about what we should do when we die and also incorporates how we should do what we should do when we live. So the first part of the purport talks about how by remembering the Lord at the last moment of our life, then that's perfection. So there's 2 verses in the Bhagavad Gita that say this, 8.5 and 8.6. I don't remember the full Sanskrit translation for Sanskrit meter for them, but they both essentially say that if you remember Krishna at the very last moment, then you go back to him. And there's another verse that says, Yagam Vapi Swaram. Whatever you remember, you go back. You go there. So if you remember like Bharat Maharaj, he died in the consciousness of remembering a deer, and therefore he took birth as a deer. So but if the positive side of that is if we remember Krishna at the time of death, then we go back to Krishna. So then the question remains, okay, so we know this, we know 8.5, we know 8.6 in Bhagavad Gita, so it only talks about the end of death. However, that means I can just enjoy my entire life. I don't need to think about Krishna, I don't need to think about Guru or anything, or initiation, or any of these big words, or japa, or reading, or any of that. And then when I die, then I will be okay. Then I will be in a position to do that. But that is not how it works. A wonderful example is that if you are preparing for retirement, you don't start preparing for retirement at age 55 if you want to retire by 60. You start preparing for retirement at age 25. Even I work at a lab at Ohio State, and I'm getting emails from the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System about my retirement paycheck, and I'm working 10 hours a week. But even now, the state is telling me to take money for my retirement, even though I'm nowhere close to retiring. I wish I was closer, but I'm nowhere close to retiring. So in that way, we should also be preparing for a moment of death all the way through our entire life. His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj has a book, Life's Final Exam. Death is our life final exam, and before a good student before an exam will study for that exam. All the sadhana we're doing now is that we can at the end of our life we can leave in the consciousness of Krishna. But we do it now so we can remember it later. I think in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 8th chapter, Prabhupada says that by constantly chanting the holy name, our remembrance of Krishna is awakened. So we also hear in, I believe, the Nectar of Devotion, that there's so many do's and don'ts that we have to offer obeisances like this, we should worship the deity like this, we should not eat this on this day, we should not do this on that day. But all of those do's and don'ts are servants. The word in the Sanskrit text is kinkara, servants to 2 principles. Always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna. This is a very important point. We have to always be the goal of all these rules is to remember Krishna's to always remember Krishna and never forget him. This is why Rupa Goswami has, in 6 things unfavorable to devotional service, has niyamagraha. Niyamagraha has 2 translations, niyama agraha and niyama agraha. Niyama agraha means that there's no attachment to following the rules and regulations. So this is one bad thing. This is one extreme. Being too liberal. We're saying, being too sahaja, saying, I think I can just go to that advanced stage without following the rules and regulations. No, we have to follow the rules and regulations in order to get there. But Rupa Goswami also warns of another extreme, niyama agraha. Niyama agraha is following the rules and regulations for the sake of following them, or Prabhupada says in the purport to that verse, it could be for economic development or sense gratification. We follow it for that sake, and not for the sake of getting to Krishna, not for the sake of remembering Krishna. Because, as Rupa Goswami says, the essence of every rule and regulation is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is when you always are thinking of how to please Krishna, how you're always fixed in Krishna consciousness. So that we have to, at some point we have to remember Krishna, especially at the time of death. That's how we can go back. However, only if we practice throughout the entire life will we get to a point that we can remember Krishna at the time of death. Because death is a very, very shocking, scary time. But only at that time will we actually be sober to the reality of what life is. I'm going to give you an example. I'm not necessarily endorsing this example. I'm just saying what Gauranga Prabhu had experienced. His Grace Gauranga Prabhu was giving a lecture, and he quoted this one devotee in the United States. That devotee's either grandfather or older relative was leaving his body, and he was in ISKCON, his family wasn't, so he was brought to that older member, and they all said, like all the family said, you need to seek some spirituality to make him feel better. Because they were all saying, even though he was about to leave in the next day or two, he was saying, all the family was saying, he'll get better, trying to give hope to this suffering man. Trying to give hope, false hope to the suffering man. Even though medically it was clear that he did not have a lot of time left, the family was still trying to encourage him. So this devotee, I'm not encouraging this in all circumstances. This devotee quoted from the first canto, 13th chapter, where Vidura tells Dhritarashtra, he kind of sobers him a little bit. Says you have to you're in the home of the people who defeated you. You're getting care from them even though you are so envious towards them. What is your stature? You've gone to such a low level. So in this way he criticizes him, but that wakes Dhritarashtra up. And in the same way, in this family that this devotee was preaching to this older dying family member, the rest of his family was like, okay, this is not the spirituality we want. We want more of the uplifting stuff. Please leave. And this older family member said, no, I want him to stay because this is the truth. This is ultimately the truth, that everything I've been doing has just been culminating in suffering. So we understand that this material world is so hard. And the point of death is so crucial because whatever we think about, then we leave. There's also that example of that one, I don't know if it was where the context was, but there was one person who was like hit by the tusk of a boar and was dying. And in Arabic he was saying haram, haram, which means abominable. He was calling the boar abominable. But because he was saying Ram, 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 even though he wasn't necessarily thinking directly of Krishna, he still got liberation. But we should not depend on things like that. Because we know we have the backing, we have the duty to increase our remembrance of Krishna. So the point that we're making is that death is a very difficult time. So in order to remember Krishna at death, you should remember Krishna throughout your life as well. So the next part of the purport talks about how we can get that perfection of life. And along with chanting, it describes that we should hear. But we should hear about Krishna. So we have so many books to hear about Krishna from. We have so many things to hear about Krishna. We can hear about the glories of his holy name, his pastimes, the tattva, the practicality, like the way we can get to Krishna. There's so many topics of Krishna. Yesterday I was reading a verse with one of my devotee friends. He quoted a verse from the 4th canto, 30th chapter about the prachetas, and they said that, I think it was 4:30, 36 if I'm not mistaken, but it said that when topics of the transcendental world, Prabhupada uses the word transcendental world, when those are discussed, for the time being, everybody loses their material attachments, and we're all free from envy and false hankerings. We're all free from quarrel and hankerings. And my friend was noting the word transcendental world. Topics of the transcendental world, topics of the transcendental nature. So not just, okay, this is Krishna's Ashtakali Lila, we have to get that, otherwise anything else, there's no benefit. No, Prabhupada Katamrita, that's not like from the Bhagavatam or anything, but that's still it's about Prabhupada, it's about Prabhupada's life, it's about a pure devotee's life. And because Prabhupada really is from the transcendental world, that is considered Krishna Katha, and that has the same potency as everything else does. Hearing about the acharyas, the acharyas are not God, the acharyas are not Krishna, but that doesn't mean that they have less of a potency than otherwise. Also, we may discuss about tattva, the practical application of things. The tattva or the practical application of things.
like some of the verses in Rupa Goswami's literature, like in the Nectar of Instruction, don't have the word Krishna in them at all. That doesn't mean that they're not about Krishna, because they're talking about the topics of the transcendental world. So all of this, even if it's not directly about Krishna's pastimes, if it relates to either Krishna or getting to Krishna or Krishna's pure devotee or anything of that nature, it should be counted among the transcendental talks that has been propagated, and is worth hearing. So it says that we should hear from a realized soul as well. That's another point this purport makes. The purport says, word by word, there is no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from some mental speculator. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described in the Antya-lila, the 4th chapter of the Antya-lila. Hare Krishna. In the 4th chapter of the Antya-lila, Sanatan Goswami has come to Jagannath Puri, and he tells Haridas Thakur that some people practice but they don't preach. Some people preach very forcefully but they don't practice. But Haridas Thakur, Achar Prachar, Dui Namera Karya, Tumi Sarva Guru, Tumi Jagatera Arya. Because you don't only practice, but you also preach. That makes you the most advanced devotee in the world. And therefore you're qualified to be the guru of the whole world, because you practice and you preach. Yes, preaching is important, but Prabhupada says purity is the force. We are not making devotees off of our own marketing tactics, our own sales tactics. Really, it's purity. There's so many examples. There's just one devotee there was one devotee in Russia. His name is Bhakti Ratnakar Ambarish Swami. He's an initiating guru. He's one of the best Sankirtan devotees of all time, the #1 in Russia. And he says that there are some devotees in Russia who are such good sadhana, such pakka sadhana. They chant 16 rounds in the morning, uninterrupted, so focused. They read Prabhupada's book with so much absorption that sometimes when they go on book distribution, they'll take a case of Bhagavad Gitas, they'll sit at a picnic table, and they'll stack all the Bhagavad Gitas here, and they'll just sit. And people will come to them and say, is this book about God? And they'll say, yeah. Can I look through it? Yeah, you can look through it. And they'll look through it. Can I leave a donation? Yeah, sure, you can leave a donation. And then they distribute books. They don't say a single word, not one word coming out of their mouth. That's how strong their purity is. Of course, we should still preach. We should still have that desire to speak, because if we speak, we can get people to experience the purity that we have, or the mercy that we've gotten, and then their minds are changed. But Prabhupada says purity is the force. That's how we can tell who the good speaker. That's how the speakers are captivating, because their purity is how we can understand things. We can only get things if we're getting it from a right source. In this way, Prabhupada is saying there's no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from mental speculators, because they don't have the correct backing of knowledge. They haven't practiced the philosophy correctly in order to be able to preach. There may be people who chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for very performative benefits, but it's not the same when you hear it from somebody who's chanting with love. There's one, I'm not going to name this person, but there's one famous musician who sometimes chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for a performance. But when you listen to that compared to a kirtan, where the devotee leading the kirtan is doing it with a pure motive, there's a stark difference. The one chanting for an audience, it doesn't sound as good, it's not as attractive. But the one chanting for Krishna, for the purity of Krishna, it sounds so attractive. It's described in Andhra Prabhu's book that some people would complain that his tunes were very complicated. But people were still able to get his tunes. People were still able to respond and sing to his tunes. Yes, because he had a very nice voice and it was understandable what notes he was hitting, but really it was because he was not doing it for other people. He was not doing it so other people could participate, other people could congratulate him. He was doing it for the pleasure of Shri Shri Radhesham. That's what he described he was doing it for, and because he had the purity of motive, other people could see that and they were empowered in order to participate in the kirtan as well. So Andhra Prabhu's kirtans are so renowned because when he would sing kirtan, he wasn't singing it for his gratification or other people to come and say good things about him, or oh, I like the way my voice sounds, I like this classical ragam. No, he's saying for one reason, that's the pleasure of Radha and Krishna. That's the mood we should have in all spheres of devotional service. Prabhupada then says, when the same concepts, like the Vedic hymns, is heard from an actual self-realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. So there's a couple of points. I'll discuss service and submission first, and then we can go to the other part, which is hearing from a self-realized soul. That talks about Guru Tattva, and with that, after that Guru Tattva, we'll move on to the next verse. There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shushrushro Shadadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevayat Viprapunya Tirtani Shevanat. Shushrushro Shadadanasya, by hearing and doing it with faith, and then by submissively serving the pure, the Mahat Sevaya, by the Mahatmas, the great souls, then we are able to get taste, Vasudeva Kataruchi. We're able to get taste for hearing about Lord Krishna. And that's essentially what's saying here. The benefit of, we only remember things that we like. We don't like to remember things that don't give us pleasure. We remember things when we like them. So if we like hearing about Krishna, then we're going to do it more. It's going to affect our consciousness. My spiritual master says, if you talk about some random political event with somebody for just 5 minutes, the next 2-3 hours you're meditating on that political event. But we may not have the same thing because we don't have taste for Krishna Katha. But if we get taste for Krishna Katha and we hear Krishna Katha more and more, gradually we'll start, just like the way we talk about someone and remember it later, we talk about Krishna, will always be in remembrance of Krishna. So by submissively hearing, then we get remembrance of Krishna. There's another verse, Tadvidhi Pranipat, from the Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidhi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadek Dekshiti Yanam Yaninas Tamvashinaha. This verse says you need to do 3 things with a spiritual master. Pranipatena, you should humbly surrender to that spiritual master. Pariprashnena, you should ask questions to that spiritual master, inquire from that spiritual master about what you should do about the science of Krishna, and then finally, sevaya, you should serve. So those three things are mentioned. Those things are mentioned here. By service and submission, everything is transcendently clear. I'll say one more point on this before I move on. Hare Krishna. Once a disciple asked Srila Prabhupada, he asked Prabhupada, the Sikshashtakam, Lord Chaitanya's 8 verses that he left to everybody, you say it's the most important thing. It has all the philosophy in it. Everything you need to know about Krishna consciousness is in those 8 verses. But I don't see anything about taking shelter of a spiritual master. That's right. I mean, all of us have heard the Sikshashtakam at least once. Nothing about a guru in there. But Prabhupada responds in the letter, he says, you don't actually know the meaning of the Shikshashtaka. The 3rd verse starts with Trinad api suni chena. We should be more humble than a blade of grass. And that humility, if we're humble, we realize how insignificant and powerless we are. We are so powerless that we don't have the ability to save ourselves. So if we cannot save ourselves and we are desiring to be saved, we must go to someone who can save us. And that someone who can save us is the Guru. So Prabhupada says through this one line, Trinada pi sunichena, by being if we are humble and we are submissive, the natural course of action is to take shelter of a Guru and follow their instructions clearly. That's why humility is one of the 6 limbs of surrender. Because we cannot surrender to a spiritual master fully if we also think we can do it ourselves. If we think, I can get to Krishna myself, I can get to the happiness myself, I don't need a guru. Even if we may take initiation, if we all think that what we're doing is correct and we have everything fully done, we're not going to follow the guru's instructions and we're not going to get the guru's mercy. We have to be convinced, clearly, that we are not able to lift ourselves up by our own strength because Maya is so strong. Devi Hirsha Guna Mayi Mama Maya Durateya. Even Krishna is saying that Maya is so intense that Krishna's he says Mama Maya. My material energy is very, very difficult to cross. My spiritual master, I don't know if it was my spiritual master or somebody else, but he was saying that doesn't mean that, Krishna said that Maya is difficult to cross, so let's all just give up trying to cross it. We shouldn't try to do that either. We should recognize that Krishna is saying this is a very difficult task, but there is a solution. Mam eva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Prapadyante means to surrender. You surrender unto me, or by extension my bona fide representative, the spiritual master, then you can cross over Maya easily. So if we, with humility, accept that we do not have the ability to cross over the material energy by ourselves, and we therefore accept a spiritual master, then we can actually make spiritual progress. I talked about Guru Tattva a little bit here, a little bit in that, but the point I want to make at the end of the purport, it says, for a common man, it is very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death, but by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters, one can get this opportunity without difficulty. This is a point that His Holiness Kadamba Swami made in one of the lectures he gave in January. He was talking about he did this thing. He said he did a seminar in the late 90s, talking about ISKCON from 66 to 99, more depressed. He said, if you look at the Back to Godhead magazines, in 1966, they were all like, we're opening our center here, we're doing Sankirtan here, here's how many books we distributed, Prabhupada's coming on this day, and we're all going back to Godhead. Everything was so uplifting, ecstatic, enlightened, everything. And then he went to 1999 and says, if your guru is not an expansion of one of the manjaris of the Ashtasakis, there's no chance you go back home, back to Godhead. And he found, he was exaggerating how at that point it was so hard to get back home, back to Godhead. But then he made the point saying, yes, it is hard to get home back to Godhead by yourself. In this context, where he's saying that it's difficult to remember Krishna by our own strength, but by the mercy of the Lord and the spiritual master, everything is possible. That Prabhupada said impossible is the word in the Fool's Dictionary, because impossible does not account for the Lord's mercy. Yes, it's very difficult to remember Lord Krishna. It's very difficult to even preach. Everything in Krishna consciousness is very difficult, but it becomes so easy with the mercy of the Lord. And the mercy of the Lord is achieved by the mercy of the spiritual master. As we say every morning, Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, Yasya prasadat nagati kutopi. If you get the mercy of the spiritual master, you get the mercy of Lord Krishna. If you do not get the mercy of the spiritual master, you cannot make any spiritual advancement. In that way, if we get the mercy of the spiritual master, Prabhupada says one can get this opportunity without difficulty. By getting the mercy of the spiritual master and the Lord, we get this opportunity without difficulty. Kadamba Maharaj, one of his albums is, I am nothing great or nothing big, but so much mercy carries me. That's the mood we should have. We should always think that whatever we're doing is the mercy of the spirit of the Vaishnavas, our spiritual master, our Siksha spiritual masters, and ultimately Shri Sri Radha Natabar. So we'll move on to the next verse. I think I'll finish all the verses and then we can discuss at the end. I was supposed to finish by 8:45, and we have 2 more verses to get through. So we'll see how this goes. Text 5. I'll just recite the verse once so that we can go through quickly. Tavat kalirna prabhavet pravishtopi hasarvataha yavat isho mahan urvyam abhimanyava ekarat. Actually, let's all recite together. Tavat kalirna prabhavet pravishtopi hasarvataha yavat isho mahan urvyam abhimanyava ekarat. Translation: as long as the great powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there is no chance that the personality of Kali will flourish. As purport, as we have already explained, the personality of Kali has entered the jurisdiction of this earth long ago, and he was looking for an opportunity to spread his influence all over the world, but he could not do so satisfactorily due to the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. That is the way of good government. The disturbing elements like the personality of Kali will always try to extend their nefarious activities, but it is the duty of the able state to check them by all means. Although Maharaj Parikshit allotted places for the personality of Kali, at the same time he gave no chance for the citizens to be swayed by the personality of Kali. Yeah, it's described that actually Kali was present, and then this next verse will describe Kali was present when Kali was trying to exert his influence when Krishna was there, but he couldn't because Krishna was there. And then Parikshit Maharaj was present, and Kali still couldn't exert his influence. We just saw the last chapter. Kali tried to beat the personality of Dharma, and in the process was making the cow of Mother Earth cry. But guess what happened? Parikshit Maharaj came and said, "No, Kali, you cannot do any of this. This is all nonsense. I don't want you here. You can reside in 4 places where meat eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit sex are." And then Kali said, "Actually, that doesn't happen in your kingdom." But then Kali was given one more concession: you can reside where gold is, because wherever gold is, conflict arises, and when conflict arises, Kali can very easily take place. That's why we see all the issues, a lot of issues in our world, come off the fact of money. We see people suing each other because of money. We see even families suing each other because they want this asset or this asset or this asset. All of it's based off of money. So that's where Kali comes from. But it's described that a good king, like Maharaj Parikshit, was able to subdue the effects of Kali. And that's part of the role of a Kshatriya. It's described that Brahmanas should be shanta, should be peaceful. But Kshatriyas not necessarily should be peaceful. Their duty is not necessarily to keep the peace. If there is something strong, if there's something against, it is their duty, their service to Krishna to put it out. It says that of all of the varnas, the brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, the kshatriyas are allowed to hunt in the forest. Now we may be questioning, okay, our whole society, our whole dharma talks about vegetarianism, that we should have ahimsa, we should not be violent. But why are we allowing kshatriyas to hunt? The explanation is given, when the kshatriyas kill those animals, they are not killing for their own sense gratification. They're not going to kill and then eat those animals. They are doing that for one reason, because they need to keep their skills strong. Because if there actually is a threat to the nation, and the king is like, I don't know how to hold a bow and arrow, is it like this, is it like this, is it like this, then what's going to happen to the kingdom? They're not going to be prepared. So the Kshatriya class has the concession to go on regulated hunting missions in order to be strong enough to protect the kingdom. Bhagavad Gita, I believe, in the 18th chapter, I think that in one of the verses from 50 to 60, it's not specific at all, I apologize. In one of the verses from 50 to 60, the Bhagavad Gita states that and just like all fire is covered by smoke, every endeavor has its fault. And Prabhupada in the purport says, the brahmanas in animal sacrifices may have to kill some animals. Vaishyas, in order to make a living, they may have to lie for their profit, like businessmen. Shudras, they may have to serve masters who are not morally or ethically okay. And Kshatriyas, they may have to use force in order to protect their kingdom. They may have to use violence. But just every endeavor is covered with some fault. And just because they may have to be strong, they may have to use violence in order to protect others, they should not neglect it thinking it's just violence. So this verse describes how Maharaj Parikshit was such a powerful leader. I'll answer. Was such a powerful leader that all of the effects of Kali were not able to show. There was another reason why they were not able to show, and we'll discuss this very quickly in the last verse. I'll just recite the verse once and we'll go quickly through the purport. Yasmin ahanyarhyeva bhagavan utsasar jagam tadeva hanuvrittosav adharma prabhavakali. Translation: the very day and moment the personality of God and Lord Sri Krishna left this earth, the personality of Kali, who promotes all kinds of irreligious activities, came into the world. Purport: the personality of God and His holy name, qualities, etc. are all identical. The personality of Kali was not able to enter the jurisdiction of the earth due to the presence of the personality of Godhead. And similarly, if there is an arrangement for the constant chanting of the holy names, qualities, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no chance at all for the personality of Kali to enter. That is a technique of driving away the personality of Kali from the world. In modernized human society, there is great advancements of material science, and they have invented the radio to distribute sound in the air. So instead of vibrating some nuisance sound for sense enjoyment, if the state arranges to distribute transcendental sound by resounding the holy name, fame, and activities of the Lord, as they are authorized in the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, then a favorable condition will be created. The principles of religion in the world will be reestablished, and thus the executive heads, who are so anxious to drive away corruption from the world, will be successful. Nothing is bad if used properly for the service of the Lord. This is such a wonderful purport. Prabhupada says you can talk about one verse of the Bhagavatam for so many days. I think Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talked about one verse of the Bhagavatam for 60 days. 60 days straight class, one verse of the Bhagavatam. I mean, it's seen here. This purport has so many wonderful features. Chandra Prabhu was calling you. If you're watching this, Chandra Prabhu, he'll respond later. So yeah, the first thing I like to discuss is Krishna's disappearance. In the 11th canto, it describes Krishna's disappearance from the world. he doesn't die. Obviously, he's God. He doesn't have a material body like the rest of us. He disappears. He leaves the earth, but he's still present in his spiritual abode. But the way he orchestrates the fall of the Yadu dynasty and his own leaving the abode was very carefully described. In short, what ended up happening is all the Yadus, like 5-10 million of them, came on to Pravas on the shore, and there was a bunch of iron canes there. They started drinking, and as we see in the material world, when alcohol is involved, violence comes. And even though they were brothers and family and everything, they started taking these iron canes and started beating each other to death. So all but 5 or 6 of them were killed. And Krishna was sitting on the banks of the river, and one hunter, Jara, shot an arrow at his feet. And although it didn't puncture him, it was the superficial way, oh, it's Krishna left. And you might think, why did Krishna leave like this? He could have just been like, Haribo, Dandava Pranam, and then just gone and left. But he did it, but the purport describes a very interesting reason why. Because Kali had to enter, the age of Kali had to start. When Lord Ram left the planet, it was done in a very ceremonious way. I don't know the exact details, but that purport describes how when Lord Ram left, everyone was so enamored that religion was preserved. Because it was the Dwapar Yuga, religion can be preserved a little bit. But now it's Kali Yuga. This is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. Religion cannot last. Because the whole material world is for people to enjoy what they want. And those who want to enjoy in a sinful way, their desires, Krishna wants to give them the independence. Otherwise, then he's just controlling them. He wants to give them the independence to go and the independence to come back. So because of that, he creates the opportunity. But if he left in a very ceremonious way, saying, I'm the personality of God and I'm leaving now, everybody should worship me, everyone will be chanting, Haribo, 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 and nobody would, where's the irreligion? So Krishna leaves on purpose like this to create so many puzzles. Why did Krishna leave like this? Why did the others do this? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? So many questions arise from this Moksha Leela, how Krishna leaves. But Krishna does that on purpose, because he knows if he leaves in a very peaceful manner, there's going to be no irreligion. His worship will continue, everything will continue. But if he leaves in such a confusing manner, where everyone is like, why is this happening? Why? What happened? It's so confusing. That confusion allows for irreligion to grow. So Krishna leaves just so irreligion can grow, because people want to enjoy without Krishna, and Krishna is merciful. He gives us the independence so that we can enjoy a little bit, but we should properly utilize that independence. So in the purport, a couple of points. There's 3 main points. First, the non-difference of Krishna and his holy name, pastimes, and everything. The second is how we can solve the problems, and the third is how we can use everything in the service of Krishna. So the first point is how Krishna is non-different from his holy name. The Padma Purana states, Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shruto Nitya Mukto Abhinna Tvama Naminamana. Nama Chintamani is the touchstone. The holy name of Krishna is the touchstone. It fulfills all the desires. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, it gives lots of rasa, taste to the living force. Purno, it's complete. Shuddho, it can purify. Nitya Mukto, it's always liberated. But then you might ask, no other word, no other sound has this potency. So why are all of these exalted potencies assigned to the name of Krishna? And the last verse explains, Apinna Tvama Nama Namina. There is no difference between Nama and Nami. There is no difference between the holy name of Krishna and Krishna himself. The altar, we see Krishna on the altar in his Archa Vigraha form. That is not different than Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. When we discuss Krishna's pastimes, Krishna says, I am present there, because Krishna is not different from his pastimes. This is the absolute nature of Krishna. It's not like I can skip school one day and put out my name, Rahul Rajaram, on my desk, and my teacher will say, yes, his name is here, therefore he is also present, mark him present. No, I have to personally be there, because my name and myself are different. But Krishna is not like that. Krishna and his holy name are non-different. So, there's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that says, Krishna sama surya maya haya andakar, yahan Krishna tahan nahi mayara adhikar. On the back to God in magazines, you see at the top, Godhead is light, nations is darkness, where there is God there is no nations. Or where there's light, there's no darkness. This verse is the way that comes from. It says, Krishna is like the sun, and Maya is like darkness. Maya haya andakar. Wherever there is Krishna, Yahan Krishna, Tahan Nahi Maya Ara Adhikar. Adhikar means authority. Wherever there is Krishna, Maya, the illusory energy, illusion, has no authority there. Similarly here, wherever there is Krishna, Kali has no authority. The second way is how can we solve these issues of Kali? We've heard so much, oh, Kali is like this, Kali is like that, Kali is like that. It just seems like someone who's just a Debbie Downer. They're pointing out all the flaws without giving any solutions. They're just saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and there's no solutions attached. Then they might as well just not speak. But now we have the solution. It says we should now arrange for large sessions of congregational chanting of the holy name, the pastimes of the Lord, the form of the Lord. We should all be chanting about these things to purify the atmosphere. It's described that we see a lot of concerns about air pollution, right? There's particulate matter in the air. We see a lot of concerns about water pollution. And those are very important. We should deal with them. We also should deal with sound pollution. That what we're hearing is not actually beneficial for us in the long run. So in order to counteract that, we should, as the Krishna Conscious Society, take responsibility for arranging to clear the sound, to make the sound transcendental. And that's what Prabhupada is saying here. So instead of vibrating other sounds, yes, the needed sounds should be vibrated about like what's going on in the world. We should also try and encourage people to speak about Krishna in public. That's why we do Harinam, to purify the atmosphere. Because when we purify the atmosphere, people can re-spiritualize their life. But the holy name can purify the atmosphere. That's why we preach. So in that way, we can spiritualize the atmosphere, we can purify everything. So that's the second point, that the solution to all of the flaws of Kali are to engage in the chanting of the holy name and the chanting of the Lord's pastimes. Because when we chant, Krishna is present there, and where Krishna is, Maya cannot stand, Kali cannot stand. So just by chanting the holy name, just by describing Krishna, Krishna will be present, and then all of the issues will be solved. The last point that is made is nothing is bad if properly used for the service of the Lord. In one of the WhatsApp group chats, there was this interesting discussion where one verse says we should be free from attachment and aversion, and another verse says we should hate the material world. We should hate the enjoying the material world. And there was confusion. One verse says we should have aversion, or have no aversion, and another verse says we should have aversion to the material world. And the resolution of the discussion was, we may have aversion to the idea that we are the enjoyers of the material world, but we should not have aversion to anything in the material world. Rupa Goswami says, Anasaktasya Vishaye, Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchate. I glance on the second line. But yeah, it says everything, the whole material energy is meant for the service of Lord Krishna. So one who has properly renounced things is actually the one who is using everything in the service of Lord Krishna. That is the definition of renunciation, Yukta Vairagya. Prabhupada gives the example in the purport. It's not like we see the radio is created. It's not like we go and throw the radio on the ground and say, this is all mine. No. We should use it for the service of Lord Krishna, because that's how it's properly used for. We should be free from attachment to enjoying the material world, but also Prabhupada says things that are being used in the service of the Lord, we should not be averse to those. We should be attached to those. We should engage those things in the service of Lord Krishna, because that's the original purpose of everything. We see we see all these social media sites like Instagram, Facebook, and everything, and we see these are ways to spread to get people distracted from spiritual life. But then you see so many online preachers like Amoglita Prabhu, Gaur Gopal Prabhu. They're using these platforms to spread Krishna consciousness magnificently. Like Swami Bhagavan Keshamar, as a lot of his preaching is specifically curated for social media. So in this way, we can use all of these different platforms for the service of Lord Krishna. I'm only 7 minutes over. Usually I'm like at least 20 minutes over. So I'll stop here. We kind of skimmed over the details. I really would encourage everyone to go and read these verses and reflect on them, because these verses have so much nectar, and every single verse has so much nectar. It's so important, and every word of Prabhupada's purports, and all verses, but especially these ones, have so much to discuss about, so much potency. Nayan Prabhu has a question. Let me read the question fully. If Kali Yuga means that society will degrade in the future, then why preach? Because only a few will take the message. The masses will not take on the message by definition. Yeah, so it says that in 10,000 years, ISKCON will not be able to last, because there won't even be, we can't even preach. It'll be so degraded by then. But Prabhupada gave kind of the analogy in a different situation, saying, do we not use fresh vegetables today because they're going to go bad tomorrow? No, if they're fresh today, we should use them. So yes, we may not be able to save the whole world, But we should preach. And also, we will be able to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the whole world because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Priti Viti Achi Adi Nagaradigram Sarvatra Prachara Haive Moranam. We should, Lord Chaitanya said, my holy name will be chanted everywhere. Lord Chaitanya has already said, my holy name will be chanted in every town and village. So we already know that it's going to happen. Hare Prabhu, he was giving class a couple months ago. He said, the soccer match is over. We have 100 goals, Maya has 0. We just have to get on the field and all of it's done. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says to Arjuna, the fight is over. Everybody's already been put to death by me. I've already killed everybody. Now you have one job. Nimitta matram bhavasadya sachin. Whoever Krishna has decided to deliver, they have already been delivered. Now our job is to preach and actually just finish the job. We are going to be the instrument because Krishna wants to give us the credit. Krishna could take the credit himself and that would be nice, but Krishna wants to give us the credit. So we should go and preach. We should go and preach because whatever has happened has already happened. Krishna has said, I will bring all, Lord Chaitanya said, my holy name will be chanted everywhere. So all we have to do is just go. Kali Yuga will degrade and only a few people will take the message, but those few are good and are enough. Even Prabhupada says, even if we make one pure devotee, our society is successful. So we should not be discouraged by not everybody taking up the mission. Prabhupada was asked, why, if Krishna consciousness is so blissful, why isn't this temple hall packed? And Prabhupada said, more people will go to a store for a fake diamond than a real diamond, because the real diamond is more expensive. So in that way, people will go for other things that are not going to give them satisfaction. More people will go there than they will come to Krishna consciousness. So not everyone will come to Krishna consciousness. There may be that possibility, but that should not discourage us from preaching, because if we save even a couple of people, Krishna will be very pleased. Any other thoughts, questions?
So you mentioned about confusion, right? Krishna left the world with confusion, and that caused more promotion towards religion or irreligion?
Irreligion, yeah. So the confusion caused by Krishna's disappearance caused not just confusion but chaos, right? Because the personality of God was on the earth, and this dynasty that was leading, there was 10 million, so not, I don't think there was 10 million people in the dynasty, but 10 million teachers for the people in the dynasty. So it was such a big dynasty. And all of that was destroyed so quickly. And also it said there was also some other, I don't know the full circumstances, but there were some issues coming about. And that chaos that was caused, and the confusion, because some people were like, oh, Krishna is, because then the question would be asked, how did Krishna die like this if he's a supreme personality of Godhead? That very thought also breeds for irreligion. So the chaos and the confusion breeds for irreligion. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully that makes sense.
The scientists keep doing because this verse says that distribute transcendental sound by resounding the holy name. So the scientists these days do they distribute this some sound kind of vibration. It's going in the space in 1,000 years, it will reach to some, and then it come back in some form, so we get contact some medium. These kind of things really happens, right?
I think so.
That's what the scientists do, right?
I'm not 100% sure what the details of it are, but yeah, they are they're doing yeah.
They send it, but here Prabhupada is saying that even if you do distribute any transcendental sound, that means you send the holy name, right? Fame and activities of the Lord.
Right.
But then it says then a favorable condition will be created. So how the favorable condition? What did it say? Because unless the scientist or whoever is doing, why would they do it? Because in that case, unless they have the spiritual vision that they understand the importance, otherwise they are looking for some material achievement out of it. So how that favorable condition can be created for them?
Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, the scientists will create things and devotees will use those things in Krishna's service. So those who are creating it may not have the intention of using it in Krishna's service. That they may not have that prerogative, but it's our onus to find those things and to use them in Krishna's service. In various temples there are dioramas. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur started that. He said, there's all these exhibits in museums and everything. Let's use that because people are attracted to those things, and let's use it for Krishna's service. We see things like Krishna.com and Mayapur TV. All of those things use cameras. that are not. It doesn't say in the Bhagavatam use a camera to broadcast Radha Madhav and Mayapur. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bhagavatam. But devotees are using it for Krishna service. So they may create it, but it is our onus to use it in Krishna service. So even if they don't have the intention of creating it for Krishna service, if they intention on doing it something else, if we use it for Krishna service, then the effect is the same.
Even in the Gita, Krishna says sometimes don't disturb people who are already working. As a verse. So sometimes not all people are ready to accept the message, but as devotees, Vaishnavas are very compassionate. We meet them where they are. And people may not understand the philosophy, but everyone likes Kirtan. And even people who don't like Kirtan like Prasad. So you start somewhere. I was listening to a lecture from Hare Krishna, and he was saying that everyone who's become a devotee will say at some point that they've had Prasad. And then every little thing adds up. And then they come into contact, and then they're slowly more and more receptive. So I don't think we should, I don't know if the point of the purport is to say the rest of the world is horrible, and yeah, we all have thoughts about our government and all that, but I think it's more about what can we do as devotees, and how can we meet people where they are. And that's why there's so many programs. Calcutta Prabhu was here. There was a yoga program for people who are interested in yoga. There was another program for, again, people who are very interested in yoga, but the Ashtanga yoga. So the way you share the message, and even sometimes people feel preaching is a strong word, but basically Prabhupada said share. That's what he said. The way you share the message will be different in this temple house versus outside. But the underlying thing is getting people one step closer to Krishna. I think if you have that expansive view, it will be very hard to judge others or say others are bad, but focus more on what can we do to help people.
So the purpose is whatever service we are doing, even if they are preaching, that it should purify us. First of all, we remain Krishna. Like Ranchor Prabhu was mentioning that that some devotee in the Florida somewhere that they were just sitting and the people coming taking the
In Russia. Yeah, they were saying. I mean, Russia's story is amazing because they were not allowed to preach openly, but they still made so many devotees. So yeah, like the point that we're making is, it's not necessarily. The point of this verse is that we should use the technology. That we should acknowledge the technology right now is not being used in its correct purpose because it's not being used to serve Lord Krishna. Everything is meant to serve Lord Krishna. And we should use all the technology that we have to serve Lord Krishna in the ways that we have been described. On the topic of prasad, in one temple, Prabhupada was visiting. They said we normally read the translations of Guru Vashtakam after the morning program. Prabhupada said okay. Prabhupada said yes. So they were reading translations, and he got to the fourth verse. Chatur Vidashri Bhagavat Prasada, and Prabhupada turned to his personal servant and said, "This is the best verse. This is the best part." That verse talks about how the spiritual master organizes for his devotees to eat prasadam. And Prabhupada said this is the best part. So yeah, prasadam is very purifying. The holy name is purifying. Even if people touch Srila Prabhupada's books, it's purifying. So there's like those little things get them there. And then also we have other programs like yoga programs, vegan cooking programs. We have all those other programs that are purifying as well. So yeah, we should come up with ways to use the material world in the service of Lord Krishna for the empowerment of everybody else, and the empowerment of everyone else that's preaching.
In today's world, it's so apparent the radio transmitted sound or whatever the sound you find outside is carrying Kali energy. It's dragging you towards it. So in this verse, it's just you need to keep a check on that. It's very obvious. We just listen to a 10-minute drive, and radio will drag you to that.
Right, you just listen to like 10 minutes of like some political debate and your consciousness is ruined. You listen 10 minutes about this and you've forgotten about Krishna and all these things. So if you should understand what's happening in the world. Prabhupada, there was one devotee named Gaur Govinda Swami. He was a Vaishnava from birth. And he said, I don't read the news, I don't want to get involved. And Prabhupada said, you should read the news so that you can preach, so that you can understand. Even Prabhupada, you'll hear in Kenya, he understood that they were just getting independence and they were starting to urbanize. So Prabhupada says, Your country, they can develop, but make sure they develop in a spiritual realm as well. Don't just be like the West, who's developed only in the material realm. Make sure your country develops in the spiritual realm. So he used those things in the service of Lord Krishna. But yes, you're saying that the sound does carry Kali's energy. Anything else?
It says that the very day and moment personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna left the earth, Kali came, right? But then there is another verse, Krishna Swadhama Pavitra Dharma Bhagavatam arose as brilliant as the sun. So Krishna never left. Kali Kale Naam Krishna.
Right.
But I guess it's plan of Krishna to have Kali. Ultimately, Kali has to finish. All people have to become degraded and Kalki has to come.
Right.
That verse is in response to the question of the sages who say, now that Krishna has left the planet, what is the shelter? What is the shelter for him? What is the shelter for him? The people who are looking. And that's when he says, Bhagavatam has risen like the sun.
Yeah, Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna.
Right.
Holy name is not different from Krishna. Krishna is still present.
So that Krishna was always there. So then when he was there, Kali couldn't come. So when he left, wherever those holy Krishna is not present, then Kali can come. But in the place where we reach Bhagavatam, where we worship the deity, where we chant the holy name, all of those things Kali cannot go there. Krishna is already there. As it says, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andhakar Yahan Krishna Tahan Naya Mayara Adhikar. Wherever Krishna is like the sun, Maya is like darkness. Wherever Krishna is, Maya has no authority there. So that's how we should think. And Kali can be seen in a similar way.
So it's like earlier Krishna was present, like the father is present, and then you cannot do anything wrong, right?
Right.
Then Krishna left. Okay, you want freedom, take it, but then he also giving the instrument. Okay, you want call me, and you can still stay connected to me.
Right.
So his Krishna is present, but now it's the freedom, our choice.
Right.
Can I ask one question? I would like to hear your. This is a little out of context. I just wanted to hear your own words. What does it mean by pastimes? Like when you describe Krishna's pastimes?
Right, yeah. So the pastimes of Lord Krishna are described, just what Krishna did, and they're described mainly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and also in the Krishna book, Prabhupada's transcription of the 10th canto. There are many different pastimes, not just about Krishna, but about like his other avatars.
Asking you to clarify the word.
Word itself. Like when you say like, is it about the things happened in the past? Is it about the future? Or is it about the present?
It's like passing time.
Yeah.
How does it like
How does Krishna pass his time?
in leisure? How does he what do you do for recreation, right? So you pass your time, you go to vacation, something like that.
So and that
It's like
it applies to everything, like past, future, present.
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually described, I heard this from Hare Krishna Prabhu, he's a devotee scholar. He said that when Krishna, that these things are actually in the present, like some of the verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam are in the present tense, even though they describe things that happened 5,000 years ago. And the reason is because whenever Krishna wraps up his pastimes in one universe, he moves to a different universe and performs those same pastimes there. Just as the sun, when it rises in one place, it sets in another, and while it's setting, let's say it's setting in Columbus, it's rising in India. So in the same way that it moves from one universe, it comes into another. So all the pastimes are happening all the time, somewhere or another. Krishna's performing them here or there. So, right, yeah, even if they haven't happened yet, like Kalki Avatar hasn't happened yet, at least in this universe. But at some point it will. So the pastime is described in the 12th canto.
Gita Srini Mataji answered this. I think somebody asked this question. Then, like our activities are having karma, like negative all the reactions. But Krishna comes by his design. He is like no desire, so that's why his also activity have no effect. So, but he's coming for the compassion for the conditioned soul. That's why all his activities, those are called no kunta, so no distress or no misery. That's why his activities are called the pastime. So that's different.
I just wanted to share one thing about what you said about preparing your whole life for preparation at the time of death. You all know about the Alvars in South India. There's one Alvar, Nammalvar. He's the most prolific. He's written so many verses. And to this day in Sriraman, the services start with reciting those prayers. He also left the planet at a very young age, and he says one word in Tamil. It's only 3 words, but it has so much meaning. He says, "Apodeki ipode samya." What that means is, apodeki means at the time of death. I don't know if I will remember or say at the time of death. That's why I'm chanting today. And that's one, but the next line I don't remember the Tamil, but what he says is, I am saying your name now, it is your job to come into my consciousness at the time. Like he has that relationship, but that's the personal relationship a devotee has, the liberty he takes. Yeah, same thing, I don't know, even if the Alvar thinks that he can't say it at the time of death, then who else? Yeah.
Krishna promises actually Varaha Purana there is a verse. My devotee is not able to remember me at the time of death because of disturbances in his body, then I will remember my devotee. That's why time is now to remember. Kinkuleshwar also has that verse.
Let me leave now. Padya Padapunka. Kabhavata Pitte. Yeah, so that verse says, just like, I don't know if I'll be able to suicide at the end of my life, so I'm okay with leaving my body now if I remember you now. So.
Yeah. Also Prabhupada says, Bhajan kar sadhan kar mate janne. Don't chant like a parrot. So parrot is Niyamagra, as we were saying. So many times we mechanically chant. And if the parrot is held by the neck by the cat, we would not say Hare Krishna, chant cow cow. So we have to internalize the Mahamantra and chant it with prayerfully, so that at the time of death that comes out, because when you squeeze an orange, what comes out is orange. So whatever is inside us will come out. So we need to internalize that. Really awesome.
On the note of preparing for the deathbed and the significance of consciousness, Krishna consciousness in the deathbed, is it connected to back to Godhead? Is a very significant moment in the human birth where we have a big impact on that moment.
The Gita says that what you remember at the time of death, that's what we left it.
Generally they say, whatever you have given priority, all that in your life, when your consciousness is, that's what you remember. Like, I mean, whatever your bhav, psychological disposition, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Bhav is like what is your consciousness? That's where you.
I remember even when I was young, in a small village where we grew up, my mother's grandfather. I remember they used to have like rituals. When someone was really at their old age towards the end, the whole village will gather and just sing Vishnu bhajans. I remember that. And even my mom remembers it, like her grandfather, her great grandfather. That used to be the culture. Right? Now we try and put the dots together. But if you think about like even my own patients, even during COVID, so many of them die alone in the hospital. No family, nobody. We are there. It's really sad. But sometimes we chant them now all times. If we are in that position and they are there, we sing for them. But in Vedic culture, at least in devotional culture, we are there for each other. That soul that's departing, there is so much physical suffering at that time. That soul may or may not remember, but someone said this recently, that the power of hearing is always preserved. And that's why even if they can't chant, if those around them chant, at least they get that.
Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Gurande, Hari Bol.